There is a specific kind of entitlement that comes from people who believe that proximity to your property grants them some kind of unspoken authority over it. It is the entitlement of the person who assumes that because they live near you, because they serve in some minor capacity of neighborhood governance, because they have been here longer or know more people or simply possess more confidence than you do, that the boundaries of your property are negotiable and that your objections to their use of it are unreasonable. I have encountered this kind of entitlement exactly once in a sustained and deliberate way that required me to respond with equal deliberation and precision. I encountered it from my HOA president, a woman named Karen Feldman, and the way I responded to it is a story I have told at backyard barbecues and family dinners for 2 years now because the ending never stops being satisfying and because people who hear it always want to know exactly how I did what I did. My name is Michael Brennan. I am 48 years old. I am a landscape architect, which means I design outdoor spaces for residential and commercial properties, and I understand drainage, irrigation systems, soil composition, grading, property boundaries, and the specific legal frameworks that govern what you can and cannot do with land. This last area of knowledge is the one that mattered most in what follows. The understanding of property law, easements, permitted improvements, and the specific regulations around residential water systems. That understanding is what allowed me to respond to Karen's behavior in a way that was completely legal, entirely within my rights, and devastatingly effective. I moved to Riverside Meadows 3 years ago. It is a planned community of about 95 homes, all single-family residences on quarter-acre lots, governed by a homeowners association that manages common areas, enforces architectural guidelines, and organizes the occasional neighborhood event. The HOA is run by a 5-member board. Karen Feldman has been president of that board for 7 years. She is, by all accounts, a person who takes the role seriously, which would be admirable if her interpretation of taking it seriously did not frequently involve treating other people's property as an extension of the HOA's domain. My house sits on a corner lot at the intersection of Meadowbrook Drive and Riverside Lane. The lot is larger than most in the community, approximately 1/3 of an acre with significant frontage on both streets. The corner position and the size of the lot were the primary reasons I bought the house. I wanted space. I wanted a yard that could accommodate the kind of landscaping projects I enjoy working on in my personal time. The corner lot gave me that. It also gave me something I had not anticipated, which was visibility. A corner lot is more visible than an interior lot. More people drive past it, more people see it. More people apparently develop opinions about it. The front yard, the part that faces Meadowbrook Drive, is approximately 50 feet deep and runs the full width of the lot, about 80 feet. It is a flat, well-maintained lawn with a flower bed along the front property line and 2 mature oak trees that provide shade in the summer. The side yard, the part that faces Riverside Lane, is another 60 feet of lawn running from the front corner back to the side fence of the house. Both sections of the yard are clearly within my property boundaries, which are marked by survey stakes that were placed when the house was built, and which I had re-verified by a surveyor when I bought the property because I am the kind of person who verifies things like property lines. The trouble started about 8 months after I moved in. I came home from work on a Thursday afternoon and found a large RV parked on my side yard, the section facing Riverside Lane. Not on the street, not on the curb, on my lawn. The RV was a 32-foot Class A motorhome, the kind that weighs several tons and leaves deep tire ruts in grass when parked on it. It was parked approximately 15 feet inside my property line, straddling the lawn in a way that made it very clear the driver had not accidentally drifted onto my property, but had deliberately driven onto it and parked there with intention. I walked around the RV and found no note, no explanation, no indication of who owned it. I checked with my immediate neighbors. No one knew whose RV it was or why it was on my lawn. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. The dispatcher said that if the vehicle was on private property without permission, I could request a tow, but that I should attempt to contact the owner first if possible. I said I had no way to contact the owner because I did not know who the owner was. The dispatcher suggested I wait to see if the owner returned to move it and to call back if it was still there in 24 hours. I waited. The RV was still there the next morning. I called the HOA management company, which handles administrative functions for the HOA board, and explained that someone had parked an RV on my property without permission. The woman I spoke with said she would pass the information along to the board president and someone would get back to me. No one got back to me that day. The RV remained on my lawn through the weekend. On Monday morning, I received a call from Karen Feldman. She identified herself as the HOA president and said she was calling about the RV situation. I said I was glad she called and that I needed the RV removed from my property immediately. Karen said the RV was hers. She said she had parked it on my side yard because she was having some work done on her driveway and needed a temporary place to store the RV for a few days, and that my corner lot had space that was not being used. I said I understood that she needed a place to store the RV, but that my property was not available for that purpose and I needed it removed. Karen said she would move it by the end of the week and that she appreciated my flexibility. I said I was not offering flexibility. I needed it moved immediately that day if possible. Karen's tone changed. She said she had been parking the RV there for 3 days and had assumed I would not mind given that the space was unused and that it was only temporary. She said she was surprised I was making an issue of it, and that as HOA president she had always tried to be accommodating when residents needed reasonable assistance. I said I appreciated her willingness to be accommodating, but that parking a several-ton vehicle on my lawn without asking permission was not a reasonable request for assistance and that the RV needed to be moved today. Karen said she could not move it today because she had commitments, but that she would move it by Wednesday. It was Monday. I said Wednesday was not acceptable. She said it was the best she could do. I said in that case I would arrange for the RV to be towed at her expense. Karen said that would be an unnecessary escalation and that she was disappointed I was not willing to work with her on this. I said the RV would be towed by end of business day if she did not move it herself. She hung up. The RV was moved by 4 p.m. that afternoon. I watched from my front window as Karen and a man I assumed was her husband maneuvered the RV off my lawn, leaving behind 2 deep tire ruts in the grass that would take weeks to repair. I went outside after they left and photographed the damage. The ruts were approximately 4 inches deep and ran for about 20 feet across the side yard. The grass in the ruts was torn and compressed. It was not catastrophic damage, but it was damage that would require regrading, reseeding, and time to repair. I sent an email to Karen that evening with the photographs attached and a brief message stating that the RV had caused damage to my lawn and that I expected the HOA or Karen personally to cover the cost of repair. I received no response. I sent a follow-up email 3 days later. No response. I called the HOA management company and left a message requesting that my complaint about the lawn damage be forwarded to the board. No one called back. I repaired the lawn myself over the following 2 weeks. I regraded the ruts, added topsoil, reseeded, and watered daily. The grass began to recover. I considered the matter closed, unpleasant but resolved. I was wrong. 6 weeks later I came home on a Tuesday afternoon and found the RV parked on my lawn again. Same location, same side yard, same deep ruts in the grass. This time there was a note tucked under my front door. The note was handwritten on HOA letterhead. It said, "Michael needed to park the RV here temporarily while we have guests using our driveway. We'll move by end of week. Thanks for understanding, Karen." I stood in my driveway holding the note and I felt something shift in how I was thinking about this situation. This was not a miscommunication. This was not a one-time imposition that Karen had misjudged. This was a pattern. Karen had decided that my side yard was available for her use when she needed it, and that a note left after the fact constituted sufficient notification. She had not asked permission. She had not offered compensation for the previous damage. She had simply used my property again and assumed I would tolerate it. I called Karen's cell phone, which she had included in her initial call to me. She answered on the 3rd ring. I said the RV needed to be removed from my property immediately. Karen said she had left me a note explaining the situation. I said the note was not a request, it was a notification, and that I had not granted permission for her to park on my property. Karen said she would move it by the end of the week as the note indicated. I said she would move it today or I would have it towed. Karen said I was being unreasonable and that she had explained the situation clearly. I said the situation was clear, which was that she had parked on my property without permission for the 2nd time, and that the RV would be removed today one way or another. Karen said she was beginning to think I had a problem with her personally. I said my problem was not personal, it was that she kept parking a multi-ton vehicle on my lawn without permission. Karen said she would move the RV when she was able to, and that threatening to tow it was hostile and unneighborly. I said the RV would be towed at 6 p.m. if it was still on my property. I hung up. The RV was not moved by 6 p.m. I called a towing company that handled large vehicle removal. They said they could tow the RV, but that because it was parked on private property, they would need documentation that I was the property owner and that the vehicle was there without permission. I provided my deed and a written statement. They said they could have a truck there within 90 minutes. I said that would be fine. At 6:45 p.m. Karen called me. Her tone was different, sharper. She said she had heard I had called a tow truck and that she was on her way to move the RV and that I needed to cancel the tow. I said the tow truck was already dispatched. She said I was being vindictive. I said I had given her until 6 p.m. and it was now 6:45. She said she would file a complaint with the HOA board about my behavior. I said she was the HOA board president and that she was welcome to file a complaint with herself. The tow truck arrived at 7:15. Karen arrived at 7:20 while the tow truck driver was hooking up the RV. She demanded that he stop. He said he had a valid work order and that the property owner had requested the tow. Karen said she was moving the RV right now. The driver said it was already hooked up and the tow fee was owed regardless. Karen turned to me and said I would be paying for the tow fee since I had called the truck unnecessarily. I said the tow was necessary because she had refused to move the RV when I asked. The driver finished hooking up the RV and towed it to a storage lot. Karen received a bill for the tow, $485, and a storage fee of $40 per day until she retrieved the RV. She retrieved it 2 days later. The total cost to her was $565. I received a formal letter from the HOA board 1 week later. The letter stated that I had acted in a manner inconsistent with the community spirit of Riverside Meadows by having a fellow resident's vehicle towed without adequate notice, and that the board was formally requesting that I demonstrate more neighborly consideration in the future. The letter was signed by all 5 board members, including Karen. I did not respond to the letter. I did not need to. What I needed to do was make sure that Karen understood, in terms that could not be misunderstood or ignored, that my property was not available for her use. I am a landscape architect. I design irrigation systems professionally. I understand flow rates, pressure zones, timer programming, and sprinkler head placement. I also understand that a well-designed irrigation system can serve multiple purposes beyond simply watering a lawn. It can, for example, make a specific area of a property extremely unpleasant to park on. I spent the next 3 weeks designing and installing a comprehensive irrigation system for my side yard, the section of lawn that Karen had now parked on twice. The system I designed had 6 zones, each controlled independently by a programmable timer. The zones were configured with a combination of spray heads and rotary nozzles positioned to provide complete coverage of the side yard area. The spray heads I selected were high-output models, the kind used for athletic fields, capable of delivering significant water volume over a short period. I installed the system myself over 2 weekends. I trenched the lines, installed the valve manifold, connected the zones to the main water supply, placed the sprinkler heads at optimal intervals, and programmed the timer. The timer was a commercial-grade unit with smartphone connectivity, which allowed me to control the system remotely and program custom watering schedules for each zone. I tested the system on a Sunday morning. All 6 zones activated correctly. The coverage was complete. The spray heads produced a dense, overlapping pattern of water that saturated the entire side yard within minutes. I adjusted the timer programming to run the system on a schedule that made sense for lawn maintenance. Early morning, 20 minutes per zone, 3 days per week. The system was fully functional and entirely legal. There is no law or HOA regulation that prohibits a homeowner from installing an irrigation system on their own property. I submitted the required notification to the HOA Architectural Review Committee as a courtesy, noting that I had installed a lawn irrigation system. The committee approved it without comment. 2 months passed. The irrigation system ran on its programmed schedule. The side yard lawn, which had been damaged twice by Karen's RV, recovered fully and looked better than it had since I moved in. The grass was thick, green, and healthy. I received compliments from neighbors about how good the lawn looked. Then on a Thursday in late September, I received a text message from my next-door neighbor, a retired teacher named Bill Morris. The message said, "FYI, Karen just parked her RV on your side yard again. Thought you'd want to know." I was at work 30 minutes from home. I opened the smartphone app for my irrigation system and checked the schedule. The next programmed watering cycle was set for the following morning at 6 a.m. I created a new custom program. I set all 6 zones to activate immediately and run for 45 minutes each, back to back, for a total runtime of 4.5 hours. I set the program to repeat every 8 hours. I activated the program. The system turned on within seconds. I texted Bill and asked if he could see the side yard from his house. He texted back, "Yes, your sprinklers just turned on, all of them. It's like a car wash over there." I smiled. I finished my workday and drove home. When I arrived at 5:30 p.m., the RV was still parked on my side yard. The irrigation system was running its second cycle. The entire side yard was saturated. Water was pooling around the RV's tires. The grass had become soft and muddy under the weight of the vehicle. The RV itself was soaked, water streaming down its sides from the spray heads positioned around it. I parked in my driveway and went inside. I did not go out to the RV. I did not need to. At 6:15 p.m., Karen knocked on my front door. I answered. She was wet. Not completely soaked, but visibly damp, her hair flattened on one side, her shirt spotted with water. She said my sprinklers were running and had been running for hours and that they were soaking her RV. I said the sprinklers were running on their programmed schedule. Karen said the schedule was excessive and that I needed to turn them off. I said the schedule was appropriate for maintaining the lawn and that the system was programmed to run as needed. Karen said it was not normal to run sprinklers for hours at a time. I said the system was designed to deliver the water volume the lawn required and that the programming was based on professional landscape irrigation standards. Karen said I was running the sprinklers deliberately to target her RV. I said the sprinklers were installed months ago and ran on a regular schedule, and that if her RV was parked in the area covered by the irrigation system, that was a consequence of where she had chosen to park it. Karen said I needed to turn off the sprinklers until she moved the RV. I said I would not be altering my irrigation schedule to accommodate unauthorized parking on my property. Karen said she would file a formal complaint with the HOA board. I said she was welcome to do that. She left. The sprinklers continued running on their 8-hour cycle. At 10 p.m., the third cycle activated. At 6 a.m. the next morning, the fourth cycle ran. I checked the side yard from my bedroom window. The RV was still there. The ground around it had become saturated to the point of being muddy. Water pooled in the tire ruts. The RV looked like it had been parked in a swamp. At 7:30 a.m. I heard an engine start. I looked out the window and saw Karen in the driver's seat of the RV attempting to drive it off my lawn. The tires spun in the mud. The RV lurched forward slightly, then stopped, the tires unable to gain traction. Karen tried again. The tires spun, throwing mud, the RV rocking but not moving forward. She tried a third time, same result, the RV was stuck. I watched as Karen got out of the RV, looked at the muddy ground and pulled out her phone. 20 minutes later, a tow truck arrived. Not the same company I had used, a different one. The driver assessed the situation, attached a tow cable to the front of the RV and slowly pulled it forward off the lawn and onto the street. The process took about 15 minutes. When the RV was clear of my property, Karen spoke with the driver briefly, then got into the RV and drove away. The tow truck followed. I went outside after they left. The side yard was a mess. The tire ruts were deeper than before, filled with muddy water. The grass was torn up in several places where the tires had spun. The ground was saturated and soft. I took photographs, extensive photographs. I documented the damage from multiple angles, close-ups of the tire ruts, wide shots showing the full extent of the affected area. Then I turned off the custom irrigation program and reset the system to its normal schedule. I sent an email to Karen that afternoon with the photographs attached. The email was brief. Karen, your RV caused significant damage to my lawn for the third time. I am requesting compensation for repair costs, which I estimate at $800 based on the extent of the damage. Please respond within 7 days. I received a response the next morning. It was not from Karen. It was from the HOA's attorney, a man named Douglas Pritchard. The email stated that the HOA board had received a complaint from Mrs. Feldman regarding my use of an irrigation system in a manner intended to harass and damage her property, and that the board was investigating the matter. It requested that I provide a written explanation of my irrigation system's programming and operation. I forwarded the email to my own attorney, a woman named Rebecca Torres, who I had worked with on contract matters related to my business. Rebecca called me an hour later. She said the HOA's request was not legally enforceable and that I had no obligation to provide details about how I programmed my irrigation system on my own property. She said she would respond to Douglas on my behalf. Rebecca's response, which she copied me on, was concise. It stated that I had installed a legal irrigation system on my own property for the purpose of lawn maintenance, that the system operated on a schedule appropriate for that purpose, and that any damage to Mrs. Feldman's RV was the result of her decision to park it without permission on property that she knew was equipped with an active irrigation system. The response also noted that Mrs. Feldman had now parked on my property without permission on 3 separate occasions, causing documented damage each time, and that I was prepared to pursue legal action for trespassing and property damage if the behavior continued. Douglas did not respond to Rebecca. Karen did not contact me. The HOA board did not send any further letters. 3 weeks later, I received a check in the mail for $800. It was from Karen Feldman personally, not from the HOA. There was no note with the check, no explanation, just the check. I deposited it. I used the money to repair the lawn for the third time. The repairs took 2 weeks. The lawn recovered. The irrigation system continued to run on its normal schedule, 3 days per week, early morning, 20 minutes per zone. The side yard looked excellent. Karen Feldman did not park her RV on my property again. She did not park it on anyone else's property in the neighborhood either, as far as I know. She kept it in a storage facility after that. I saw it occasionally when I drove past the facility on my way to work. At the next HOA annual meeting, Karen did not run for re-election as board president. She remained on the board as a regular member, but someone else took over as president. The change was noted in the meeting minutes but not explained. I did not attend the meeting. I had no need to. The irrigation system is still in place. It runs reliably, waters the lawn effectively, and has required minimal maintenance. The side yard grass is healthy and thick. I have had no further issues with unauthorized parking. I have told this story at several gatherings. People always laugh at the part about the RV getting stuck in the mud. They ask if I planned it that way. I tell them I planned to water my lawn on a schedule that kept it healthy, and that Karen's decision to park on that lawn during a watering cycle was entirely her own. They ask if I feel bad about the RV getting stuck. I do not. What I feel is satisfied that my property boundaries were finally respected and that the cost of disrespecting them became high enough that the behavior stopped. The sprinkler system runs on its schedule. The lawn stays green. The property line remains clear. That is exactly the ending this story needed.